You know, I want you to imagine every single action movie you have ever seen.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
Right. Like, you know the exact archetype I am talking about. The hero is always so loud.
Yeah, totally boastful.
Exactly. They're the ones kicking down the front door, shouting some cheesy catchphrase, and, actively seeking out the spotlight. They desperately want the enemy, and I mean, the audience too, to know exactly who is dismantling the bad guys.
Right. It's all about the performance.
It is. But then, if you look really closely in the background of that same cinematic universe, there's usually someone else.
Hmm.
A terrifying, completely silent operative. The one who just slips through the side window, cuts the power, gets the bloody job done without a single word, and just vanishes before the smoke even clears.
No catchphrases,
No catchphrases at all, no posing for the camera, just pure, unadulterated efficiency.
which is incredibly chilling when you think about it.
It really is. And that exact archetype is who we are looking at today in this deep dive.
I am so excited for this one.
Same here. So today's mission, we are going to explore a faction within the 41st millennium that completely, utterly shatters the typical archetype of the spacefaring warrior. We are unpacking what it actually means to be a quiet professional in a universe that is just entirely populated by screaming demigods.
It's a huge contrast.
A massive contrast. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand the Raptors, which is the faction at the center of today's deep dive, we basically have to completely deconstruct everything we think we know about the towering, mythic super soldiers of this setting.
Right, the Adeptus Astartes.
Exactly. We are taking a really hard look at a document titled Raptors, the Pragmatic Art of Survival.
And what's fascinating here is how the mere existence of the Raptors, it just forces us to redefine the very concept of what a space marine actually is.
What do I mean?
Well, when you strip away the centuries of accumulated mythology, the religious fervor, and all that romanticism of war,
Which is everywhere in this setting.
it's literally the foundation of the setting. But when you strip all that away, you are left with something that barely resembles the standard Astartes. I mean, we are just so accustomed to the grand narratives of these factions.
Right, the towering transhuman figures.
Yeah, encased in these brightly colored, heavily ornamented suits of armor, just bellowing ancient oaths as they charge headfirst into melee combat.
It's very theatrical.
Highly theatrical. But the Raptors, they ground us in something much darker.
Yeah.
And honestly, far more realistic about the nature of endless attritional warfare.
Because they treat it like a job.
Exactly. They represent this fundamental shift from the archetype of the mythological
Oh, yeah.
hero, right, to the grim reality of a professional soldier.
Right, and to really understand that shift, we have to look at what they are actively rejecting. Because they don't just happen to be quiet by accident.
No, it's very intentional.
Right, they are making a conscious decision to operate differently. The source material specifically contrasts them against what they view as, quote, glory-seeking knights.
Which is such a loaded term in this universe.
It is. For the Raptors, war is not a path to honor. It is not some holy crusade to write your name in the stars. They view war as a brutal, bloody business. And that business has to be completed as efficiently as possible.
That word, business, it really just completely changes the paradigm, doesn't it?
It strips the romance right out of it, like entirely.
It does. And I think the psychology of glory in a martial culture is a really crucial baseline for us to establish here.
Yeah, let's dig into that.
Because we have to ask why armies, especially armies, in a universe as relentlessly hostile and frankly terrifying as the 41st millennium, why did they rely so heavily on honor and glory in the first place?
Right, because it's not just foolish vanity, is it?
No, not at all.
Mm.
In a galactic meat grinder, glory serves a very real structural purpose.
Okay, so what does it actually do?
Well, first off, it builds morale. Think about the billions of baseline human soldiers, the Imperial Guard.
Oh, right. The normal people facing down literal nightmares.
Exactly. Glory creates these larger-than-life legends that inspire those terrified rank-and-file troops to actually hold the line. It functions as a form of psychological warfare, too.
How so?
Well, if you have a glowing, screening knight in impenetrable armor charging ahead of your defensive line, it provides this vital psychological anchor.
It proves that you can win.
Yes. It creates unit cohesion. It makes the impossible seem survivable.
That makes total sense, because if you are a normal human facing down these impossible alien odds, you need a myth.
You absolutely have to have one.
You need to believe that the demigods fighting beside you are invincible, and that dying for honor actually means something in the grand scheme of things. Otherwise, you just break and run.
Exactly. But the Raptors, they recognize the massive psychological and tactical cost of seeking that glory.
Right. There's always a bill that comes due.
Always. And this raises such an important question for us to look at. What happens when a warrior's desire for a glorious victory or a culturally mandated honorable engagement? What happens when that overrides their raw tactical judgment?
Oh, it makes them predictable.
Highly predictable. The immediate cost is predictability.
Right, because if an enemy commander knows that a specific chapter of Space Marines will, never retreat because their code of honor strictly forbids it.
And that enemy doesn't even have to outmaneuver them.
Exactly. They simply have to dig a fortified trench, set up some interlocking fields of fire, and just wait.
Just wait for the honorable warriors to blindly charge right into the kill zone.
Which is madness. Glory cultivates arrogance.
And arrogance leads to the unnecessary waste of resources, which, in the brutal, unforgiving mathematics of this universe,
Inefficiency is a death sentence.
it is the ultimate death sentence.
I hear that, and analytically it makes perfect sense. But I do have a hard time reconciling that level of detachment with what they actually are.
What do you mean?
Well, if you completely strip away the honor, the glory, the rich traditions from a warrior brotherhood, if you reduce this ancient lineage to just a cold, calculating business equation, don't you just create a machine?
That's a very fair point.
Right, is there a risk that by treating war purely as an equation of efficiency, the Raptors lose the very humanity they are presumably fighting to protect?
Oh, that is the core tension right there.
Because if they are just calculating algorithms of death, who only care about the absolute most efficient way to end a life, what really separates them from the unfeeling horrors they are fighting against? The Necrons or the Tyranids?
That tension, that exact question, is the existential dread sitting at the heart of their entire philosophy.
It's got to weigh on them.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
But we have to contextualize this within the environment they operate in.
The 41st millennium.
Right. In this era, survival is the only true victory. The absolute luxury of honor, and it is a luxury, is a vulnerability they simply cannot afford to indulge anymore.
Because the stakes are too high.
Exactly. If humanity goes extinct because its greatest, most capable defenders refuse to fight dirty, or they refuse to retreat from an unwinnable battle just out of pride, then what good was their honor?
It's worthless if you're dead.
Completely worthless. They are the calculating professionals of the Adeptus Astartes. They have made a conscious, agonizing choice.
To sacrifice their own legends.
Yes, to sacrifice their personal glory for the stark, incredibly unglamorous reality of just keeping the species alive for one more day.
Wow. So they basically carry the psychological burden of being utterly ruthless just so that others might have the luxury of remaining honorable?
That is a perfect way to put it.
But that utilitarian mindset, it doesn't just spontaneously generate.
No, cultures don't shift like that overnight.
Right. You don't build a culture that actively rejects the foundational myths of your entire species unless you are forced into it.
Usually by trauma.
Exactly. This cold pragmatism, it was beaten into them by their history.
Let's talk about that history,
Yeah.
because it's vital.
Right. So the notes say they are the sons of Corvus Corax. They are a successor chapter of the Raven Guard, created during an era known as the Second Founding. And their history, while a lot of it is shrouded in mystery, is explicitly defined by near-constant extinction and brutal survival.
The Second Founding was such a period of immense fracturing and vulnerability for the Imperium.
The legions were broken up, right?
Exactly. The massive, unstoppable legions of the past were broken down into much smaller chapters and then just scattered across a deeply hostile, post-apocalyptic galaxy.
So they were suddenly very isolated.
Incredibly isolated. For the Raptors, being separated from the main body of their parent legion meant they were entirely on their own.
No backup coming.
None. And when a military organization is brought to the absolute brink of annihilation repeatedly,
Which the source says happened constantly.
right, not just as a one-off disastrous campaign, but as the defining rhythm of their historical record. When that happens, it fundamentally alters their tactical DNA.
It has to.
We are essentially looking at the concept of generational trauma, but applied to engineered, immortal super soldiers.
Which is terrifying. So what does this all mean for how they actually function day to day?
Well, it strips away everything non-essential.
It reminds me of a dynamic you see in the business world, actually.
Oh, how so?
Think about a startup company that has nearly gone bankrupt, 5 different times.
Okay, yeah.
They have missed payroll. They have been evicted from their office. They have had to fight tooth and nail for every single cent just to keep the servers running.
They're constantly in survival mode.
Exactly. Now compare them to a massive legacy corporation that has endless funding, century-old trust funds, and zero fear of tomorrow.
Right, the big guys.
That legacy corporation, they are going to spend millions on fancy mahogany desks, extravagant corporate retreats, and massive marketing campaigns just to tell everyone how great they are.
Because they can afford to.
Exactly. But the startup, they are incredibly lean. They are ruthless. They waste absolutely zero resources on fancy office furniture because they intimately know what it feels like to starve.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Right. The Raptors are the ultimate lean, survival-focused organization. They didn't just wake up one day and choose to abandon the pageantry.
No, they were forced to in order to survive the winter.
Exactly.
And the mathematics of that analogy are perfectly sound when you consider the standard Adeptus Astartes chapters.
The legacy corporations of 40K.
Basically, those legacy chapters are covered in purity seals, they wear heavily gilded armor, they carry massive, heavy banners into active war zones that have been in their armories for millennia.
Just dragging historical artifacts into a mud-filled trench.
Right, and the Raptors looked at those banners, they looked at their own dwindling numbers, and they realized those banners were just extra weight that didn't stop a bullet.
It's just drag.
Exactly. This cycle of near extinction forced a brutal, continuous audit of their entire culture.
An audit. I love that phrasing.
They were compelled to evaluate absolutely everything they did. Every ritual, every piece of decorative armor, every deeply held tactical doctrine. It was all put under a microscope.
And if it didn't help them survive?
They ruthlessly discarded it. Anything that didn't directly contribute to the singular, overarching goal of survival was gone.
Which leads directly into this profound and deliberate rejection of the pomp and pageantry that defines almost every other chapter.
Yes, deliberate being the key word.
Right. They didn't just quietly stop wearing the gold trim because they ran out of paint. They built an entire culture around the absence of it.
And that takes an immense amount of active, continuous effort.
To resist the peer pressure.
Exactly. To resist the cultural norms of your peers, especially in a society as incredibly dogmatic as the Imperium.
Because everyone else is doing the rituals.
The Adeptus Astartes, as a wider organization, are built upon ritual. It is their connective tissue, it is how they relate to one another and to the normal humans they protect.
So for the Raptors to just reject it?
They are acting as a deliberate counterculture. They are essentially looking at their brother chapter's warriors they ostensibly respect and silently judging their methods as deeply flawed.
That's got to make them pretty unpopular at the family reunions.
Oh, I'm sure it creates a lot of friction. But practically speaking, pageantry on a battlefield is just a giant target painted on your own chest.
Right. If you are wearing bright yellow armor, the sniper knows exactly where to shoot.
Precisely. The universe is full of massive egos, screaming warlords, and colossal monsters that just want to prove they are the strongest.
And the Raptors survive by having absolutely no ego to target.
None. They offered the enemy nothing to challenge.
I want you listening to really picture this. Imagine being in a crowded room where every single person is shouting at the top of their lungs to prove how strong they are.
Just a cacophony of boasting.
Right. They are flexing their muscles, boasting about their past victories, trying to intimidate each other. And then there's one person sitting completely quietly in the darkest corner of the room.
Blending right in.
Just blending into the shadows, calmly taking mental notes on everyone else's structural weaknesses. Which one of those people is actually the most intimidating?
It's definitely not the loud ones.
No, it is not the loudest one. The loud ones are showing you all of their cards.
You know exactly what they're going to do.
Exactly. The quiet one is a total mystery. And while everyone else is busy boasting, the quiet one is learning exactly how to dismantle the entire room.
That is the absolute essence of the Raptors.
It's chilling.
And, that quiet observation isn't just an interpersonal quirk. It is the very foundation of their combat doctrine.
Right. The notes refer to them as the masters of the unseen war.
Mm-hmm.
And it says they prize the mind as much as the bolt gun.
Which is really saying something.
It is, because for a Space Marine, the bolt gun is practically a holy relic.
It's the defining instrument of their wrath.
Exactly. So to elevate the mind-pure tactical cognition to that exact same level of importance, that's a massive shift in perspective for an Astartes.
It is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're really talking about here is the absolute mastery of asymmetrical warfare.
Okay, break that down for us. Symmetrical versus asymmetrical.
Sure. So, The standard Space Marine combat doctrine often relies on overwhelming shock and awe.
Right, the drop pods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Drop pods screaming out of orbit, slamming directly into the enemy's front lines. It's a wall of armored giants advancing methodically through heavy enemy fire.
Just breaking the enemy's spirit through sheer unstoppable momentum.
Right. That is symmetrical warfare, dialed up to 11. We are stronger than you, and we are going to punch you right in the mouth to prove it.
Okay, so what do the Raptors do instead?
Asymmetrical warfare, which the Raptors practice almost exclusively, means never, ever fighting the enemy on their own terms.
Never give them a fair fight.
Exactly. Prizing the mind over the bolt gun means relying heavily on exhaustive intelligence gathering. It means setting elaborate, multi-layered ambushes.
Traps within traps.
Yes, and utilizing psychological warfare to completely break the enemy's logistical and command structure before a single shot is ever even fired.
Wow.
They ruthlessly exploit systemic weaknesses rather than engaging in those honorable face-to-face duels.
Right, so if an enemy warlord expects a glorious frontal assault at dawn,
The Raptors will have already poisoned their water supply the week before. They will have collapsed the canyon walls on their supply lines, and they'll have assassinated all of their lieutenants in the dead of night.
so by the time dawn actually arrives, the enemy is already defeated.
Exactly. The battle is over before the warlord even draws his sword.
I get that, and it sounds incredibly effective, but I keep thinking about the sheer chaos of a massive firefight, though.
Okay, what about it?
Well, doesn't overthinking get you killed?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Right. We always hear that in high-stress combat, soldiers have to fall back on muscle memory and instantaneous reaction. If you were constantly calculating, if you were treating a chaotic war zone, like a literal chess match, doesn't that inherently slow you down?
That's a very logical concern.
I just wonder if there is a fatal tension here between being a calculating mastermind and being a decisive killer in the mud. Like, can you really be both?
That is precisely where their transhuman physiology bridges the gap.
Because they have enhanced brains.
Exactly. The calculating nature of the Raptors, all of that intense cognitive work, it happens entirely before the engagement begins.
Oh, I see.
Their preparation is so exhaustive, and their tactical algorithms are so deeply ingrained in their transhuman minds that it doesn't slow down their physical execution in the slightest.
They aren't figuring it out on the fly.
No, they aren't pausing in the middle of a firefight to solve a math equation. They have already solved the equation hours or even days before they pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
They've predetermined the absolute most efficient vector for violence.
The most efficient vector for violence. That is a terrifying phrase.
So when they do finally strike, the violence is hyper-targeted. It is delivered with devastating, decisive speed.
Because there's no guesswork.
Exactly. Think of it like the difference between a brawler throwing wild haymakers, just hoping one connects.
Which is the standard Astartes approach sometimes.
Right. Versus a precisely calibrated industrial press just crushing a specific stress point.
Oh man, that's a great image.
There is no hesitation. There is only the violent execution of a perfectly formulated plan.
A perfectly formulated plan. And this philosophy, this absolute prioritization of mine over bolt gun, isn't just some abstract theory taught to new recruits.
No, it's systemic.
It is actively implemented from the very top down. The notes say they are led by a chapter master who embodies this idea of Grimm's pragmatic command. And apparently, they have been involved in the Imperium's most recent major campaigns, where they have proven completely invaluable.
And that detail right there, the fact that they're proving invaluable right now, tells us something incredibly dark about the macro state of the Imperium.
How so? What does it reveal?
Think about it. If a faction that completely rejects the standard, glorious operational methods of the Adeptus Astartes is suddenly the most vital tool in the toolbox.
Oh, it implies that the old ways aren't working anymore.
Exactly. It implies that relying on honor and glory is simply failing. The universe is getting demonstrably darker.
The threats are worse?
The threats are becoming vastly more numerous and more sophisticated, and that reality requires darker, far more pragmatic tools.
You can't just shout at a tyrannid swarm and expect them to care about your honor.
Exactly. The Imperium is bleeding out. They simply cannot afford to lose entire regiments in glorious last stands just to make a point anymore.
They need actual results.
They desperately need victories. Cheap, efficient, subtly unglamorous victories.
It really makes you wonder about the psychological profile of the chapter master leading them.
Oh, he would have to be fascinating.
Right. If he perfectly embodies this grim, pragmatic command, he must be a profoundly chilling individual to interact with.
He would have to be. He is not a king leading from the front with a glowing golden sword, seeking to cross blades with the enemy general to win the day.
No, he's probably miles away in a command bunker.
Right. He is a master chess player who views his own superhuman brothers as incredibly valuable but ultimately expendable logistical assets.
Expendable assets. That is so cold.
It is. He maneuvers them not to win glory for the chapter, but to secure the absolute maximum return on investment for the Imperium's survival.
It's pure mathematics to him.
Yes, it is a leadership style that requires completely, fundamentally detaching oneself from the romance and the emotion of warfare.
Think about times in your own life or your own career when you were facing an absolute crisis.
We've all been there.
Right. Like a massive project was failing, a critical deadline was looming, and the entire structure of your team was just falling apart. What did you do?
You drop all the pleasantries.
Exactly. You likely had to completely abandon the way things were quote unquote always done. You stopped caring about office politics. You stopped caring about making the presentation look pretty.
You stopped worrying about whose feelings were getting hurt.
Right. And you focused purely on unglamorous, brutal efficiency just to survive the week and get the project out the door.
It's panic mode pragmatism.
Yes, that is the Raptors. But they are operating on a galactic scale with the survival of the entire human race on the line.
Constant crisis mode.
Exactly. The Imperium is in a permanent escalating state of that exact crisis. And the Raptors are the crisis management team that comes in, strips away all the pleasantries, and does the brutal, ugly work required just to keep the lights on.
Which brings us to the really haunting conclusion of their overarching narrative here.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Because the ultimate horror of the Raptors isn't that they are mutated monsters or that they use forbidden, reality-destroying weapons.
Right, they aren't corrupted.
No, the ultimate horror is what their existence represents about the state of the galaxy itself.
Oh, wow.
They are the pure embodiment of the Imperium's cold, logical necessity.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because they serve as a chilling example that sometimes the most terrifying monster in the dark is the one that simply refuses to die.
Refuses to die and refuses to play by the rules.
Right. They are the monsters who have learned to shed every trapping of honor, every single ounce of their own mythological ego, purely to ensure they can fight another day.
It's the terrifying contrast of these quiet, calculated professionals operating in a universe of screaming demigods.
They have survived endless war, not by being the strongest, or the bravest, or the most righteous.
No, by being the most adaptable.
By being the most adaptable.
And, it is a profound subversion of the heroic ideal.
It really is. We inherently want our heroes to be shining beacons, right?
Yes, beacons of morality, honor, and courage. We want them to be better than us. But the Raptors, they hold up a very dark mirror to a universe of endless war.
And what does it reflect?
It reflects back a very ugly truth,
Hmm.
that honor is a luxury, and that luxury is usually paid for by the blood of the pragmatic.
Yeah.
They have looked into the abyss of near-constant extinction, generation after generation, and they collectively decided that surviving the abyss was vastly more important than looking good while falling into it.
That leaves you with such a heavy realization.
It does. It sits with you.
Because we've established throughout this whole deep dive that the Raptors shed their honor and their glory specifically in order to survive the endless war of this universe.
Right.
But I want you to really think about this. If a universe is so brutally hostile that even its greatest transhuman warriors must actively abandon their honor just to survive another day, does that mean that honor itself is actually an evolutionary disadvantage?
Oh, that's a dark thought.
Right. And if you manage to survive by abandoning the very things that make you noble, what exactly is it that you were surviving for?
What's left of you?
Exactly. When the dust finally settles and you are the only one left standing in the background, silent and efficient, are you still a hero or just a very effective machine?
That's the question they have to live with every day.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those hard questions.